Welcome to Hardly, where books turn into 3 stories, refreshing your knowledge in minutes. Today we listen to Dale C. Copeland's book, A World Safe for Commerce, American Foreign Policy from the Revolution to the Rise of China, in which we probe into how America's pursuit of economic power has shaped its foreign policy, balancing commerce, military might, and diplomatic strategy across centuries of evolving global dynamics. Dale C. Copeland is Professor of International Relations at the University of Virginia. Don't go away. Hardly the editor will be right back with the story. In this section, we'll explore 3 gripping stories from the book that reveal how America's quest for economic dominance has driven its foreign policy decisions. These stories highlight the intricate balance between commerce, military strategy, and diplomacy that has shaped America's interactions with the world. The first story takes us back to the early 19th century, a time when America was still finding its place in the global order. The young republic was eager to expand its economic reach, especially across the Atlantic. In the 1820s, as European powers were preoccupied with their own internal matters and recovering from the Napoleonic Wars, the United States saw an opportunity to assert itself in Latin America. This period is famously marked by the issuance of the Monroe Doctrine in 1823, which was a bold declaration against European interference in the Americas. But behind this diplomatic proclamation was a more calculated economic strategy. American leaders, recognizing the importance of Latin America as a burgeoning market for goods and a source of valuable resources, sought to secure their economic interests in the region. The Monroe Doctrine served not only as a political warning, but also as an economic strategy to ensure that the newly independent Latin American countries would remain open to American trade and influence. As the book notes, the Monroe Doctrine was as much about safeguarding American economic interests as it was about protecting the hemisphere from European colonization. This move was not without its risks. The United States had to be prepared for potential military confrontation with any European power that challenged this new American policy. And yet, it was a gamble that paid off, laying the foundation for America's future economic expansion in the hemisphere. The story then shifts to the late 19th century, during a time of rapid industrialization and economic growth in the United States. With the American economy booming, there was a pressing need to secure new markets and resources to fuel further growth. This urgency led to the Spanish-American War of 1898, a conflict often romanticized in American history but rooted deeply in economic motivations. The sinking of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor may have sparked the conflict, but the underlying reasons were more complex. The United States had significant economic interests in Cuba, which was a major exporter of sugar, a commodity crucial to the American economy at the time. Furthermore, the U.S. saw an opportunity to establish a stronger foothold in the Caribbean and Asia by acquiring Spain's remaining colonies, including Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines. As the book recounts, the Spanish-American War was less about freeing Cuba from colonial rule and more about securing America's economic interests in the Caribbean and the Pacific. The war allowed the United States to project its military power globally, but more importantly, it secured new markets and strategic bases that would facilitate its economic expansion across both oceans. This move marked America's emergence as a global power, driven by a desire to secure its economic future. Moving into the 20th century, the narrative brings us to the complex interplay of commerce and politics during the Cold War. Here, the focus is on how the United States used economic policies to counter Soviet influence around the world. One of the most telling examples of this strategy was the Marshall Plan, an ambitious initiative to rebuild war-torn Europe. While often portrayed as an altruistic endeavor to aid Europe's recovery, the Marshall Plan was also a calculated effort to create a bloc of economically strong and politically stable allies in Western Europe who would resist the lure of communism. By bolstering the economies of Western Europe, the United States ensured a market for its goods and a political buffer against Soviet expansion, the book explains. This strategy was not without its challenges. There were debates within the U.S. government about the risks of pouring billions of dollars into Europe, especially at a time when the American economy was transitioning from a wartime footing to peacetime production. But the decision was ultimately seen as a necessary investment, one that would pay dividends in securing American economic and political interests in a rapidly polarizing world. The plan was not just about aid. It was a strategic maneuver to ensure that the economies of Western Europe were intertwined with that of the United States, thereby creating a stable, prosperous, and pro-American economic bloc. These stories are linked by a common thread: America's relentless pursuit of economic security and expansion. Each decision, from the Monroe Doctrine to the Spanish-American War and the Marshall Plan, reflects a calculated blend of diplomacy, military strategy, and economic foresight. This pursuit often involved a delicate balancing act, engaging in conflict when necessary, but also employing economic tools as a means of influence and control. It wasn't just about military might. It was about leveraging economic power to achieve broader geopolitical goals. The pursuit of economic dominance shaped not just America's actions, but also its identity on the world stage. The drive to secure markets and resources often led the U.S. into alliances and conflicts that defined global politics. This strategic balancing act was not always flawless, but it demonstrated a consistent understanding of the interconnectedness of economic and political power. As the editor of Hardly, by learning from these stories, we can better understand the subtle art of leveraging economic influence in a complex global landscape, a skill that will become increasingly valuable in our interconnected future. Reflecting on America's pursuit of economic power, it is clear how deeply this drive has shaped the nation's foreign policy decisions over centuries. The stories we've explored of the Monroe Doctrine, the Spanish-American War, and the Marshall Plan each reveal a calculated strategy where commerce, military might, and diplomacy were intertwined to secure American interests. But another compelling story in the book sheds further light on this dynamic: America's relationship with China in the late 20th century. As the Cold War waned, the United States faced a choice: continue its isolation of communist China or engage economically to influence its direction. The decision to pursue economic engagement was bold, and it paid dividends. American leaders believed that by integrating China into the global economy, they could not only open up a vast new market for American goods, but also encourage China to adopt more liberal economic practices. The strategy was to wield economic carrots rather than military sticks, the book notes. This approach led to a significant opening of China's economy and ultimately reshaped global trade dynamics, illustrating yet again how economic strategy can serve broader geopolitical aims. These examples confirm the critical role of economic considerations in shaping American foreign policy. From the 19th century to today, America's pursuit of economic power has often driven its engagement with the world. As the editor of Hardly, understanding these strategies can guide us in navigating future international relations, recognizing the power of economic influence over mere military strength.